It felt as if the very shadows were shifting and swirling around her neighborhood, taunting her with their secrets. Were her neighbors all oblivious to the lurking danger, or were they simply afraid to confront it? Tension suffocated her, the walls of her home closing in with each passing night. Jenna felt the chill of eyes boring into her from the shadows outside. What if Daniel, charming and friendly, concealed malevolence beneath his facade? Panic clawed at her chest, a primal warning as the folklore rang true in her thoughts. Maybe it was not just Daniel she needed to fear. Maybe something ancient was watching, prowling through the dark, hungry for fear. Those curtains would not stay drawn forever. With darkness closing around her, Jenna sensed a confrontation was inevitable. Her heart pounding, she took one last look around her haunted suburban landscape, embroiled in a battle not just with her neighbor, but with the fear that had seeped into her very soul. As she stepped into the night, the air crackled with electric tension, and she felt the weight of the unknown pressing against her. The nightmare was only beginning. Jenna's breath came in shallow, quick gasps as she stepped gently onto the cracked pavement outside her front door. The street felt foreign, each shadow creeping closer, enveloping her in a suffocating embrace. It wasn't just Daniel that haunted her thoughts anymore. The whispers of folklore echoed louder in her mind. "Predators wear masks," a voice inside her screamed. She had to discover whether Daniel was truly just a man or something far worse. Turning her gaze towards his front porch, she felt a coil of dread tighten in her gut. Everything about him had become suspect, a smile that might hide something sinister, a laugh that echoed too easily in an empty night. What lay hidden behind those closed curtains? A flicker of movement caught her eye. The curtains moved just slightly, as if someone were peering out. Adrenaline shot through her limbs, urging her to run, but also compelling her to stay. What was she hoping to find? Jenna clenched her fists at her sides, a wave of courage surging through her, and she made her way towards Daniel's house. She hesitated at the door, her pulse racing wildly. She hadn't thought this through. It was foolish, reckless even. Yet the haunting howl she'd heard echoed in her mind, drawing her in like a moth to a flame. Jenna raised her hand, knocking softly, each rattle of her knuckles sending tremors through her body. Silence. Then the sound of footsteps, heavy and deliberate. Her heart galloped as the door creaked open, revealing Daniel, the embodiment of charm, with that disarming grin plastered across his face. "Jenna!" he exclaimed, like an old friend, though her gut twisted at what lurked beneath the surface. "Hi, Daniel." "I wanted to check in on you," she forced out, willing herself to maintain eye contact, fighting the urge to glance behind him, afraid of what might lie in the darkness within. "Come in," he offered, stepping aside. She glanced into the dimness, the air thick and heavy with secrets, dread pooling in the pit of her stomach. Was the atmosphere charged with malevolence, or was it all in her head? As she crossed the threshold, the air felt colder. The faint glimmer of a child's drawing hung crookedly on the wall, its colors faded and tired. It was a picture of a smiling family that didn't include him, or didn't at least show those who might belong to his life. Goosebumps raced along her arms, and her instincts screamed to leave. "Can I get you something to drink?" he asked, his friendly demeanor almost too smooth, like a predator offering comfort to its prey. Jenna nodded mechanically, each step deeper into his home putting her on higher alert. Water's fine, thanks." Daniel turned his back to her, gliding toward the kitchen area. She scanned the room, absorbing details. The darkness seemed to thicken, creating ample hiding spots for secrets long buried. Was she imagining it, or did something glint just beyond his reach, a flash of metal? "Daniel?" she called out, trying to keep her voice steady, but the tremor betrayed her. He reappeared, glass in hand, and the sight of him filled her with dread. He walked up slowly, his face unchanging, but the glimmer in his eyes seemed to deepen. "What's wrong?" he asked, taking a sip, and she felt her hands tremble as she wrapped them around the cool glass he handed her. "Why do you keep your curtains shut?" she blurted, spurred by a sudden urgency. She felt emboldened and terrified at once. His expression faltered just for a moment, a crack in that otherwise perfect facade, revealing something she couldn't place. Some things are better left unseen. Maybe her instincts were right. The pieces didn't fit. Jenna had to know the truth. Suddenly, a loud crash from outside cut through the tension, startling her. They both turned abruptly towards the noise, the tranquility of the moment shattered. The grip of fear tightened. Jenna's fight or flight kicked in. She felt that ancient primal tug deep within her, warning her that the night was about to reveal its most horrific secrets. "What was that?" she whispered, barely audibly, her eyes darting back to Daniel, whose smile had now vanished, replaced by an unsettling glint in his eyes. As they stood on the precipice of unfolding horror, the air thick with uncertainty, Jenna barely registered the door creaking open wider behind her, inviting darkness in. The nightmare had only just begun, and someone had arrived. Jenna's heart pounded in her chest as she turned back towards the open door, a menacing void staring her down. The shadows shifted ominously, as if something waited just outside the light, poised to pounce.
She hesitated, caught between the instinct to flee and a tethering curiosity that kept her anchored to that spot. "Jenna?" Daniel's voice pulled her back, deep and low, breaking through the haze of panic. She turned to find him studying her, the earlier charm wiped clean from his face, revealing a grim intensity she hadn't noticed before. His form loomed larger, almost threatening in the dim light. "You shouldn't worry about noises." "Worry?" she repeated, the word tasting foreign on her tongue. "What do you mean by that?" Before he could respond, another crash erupted from the darkness. This time it was closer, resonating through the walls of his home. Jenna's muscles tensed, every fiber of her being screaming at her to leave before whatever it was retaliated. "Stay here," Daniel commanded, his voice sharp, strangely authoritative, yet there was a tremor beneath it. A flicker of fear passed across his features, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. He stepped toward the door, blocking her view. "I'll check." "No!" she cried, rushing forward, desperate to halt him. He barely glanced back, only leaving her with the fading echo of his footsteps as he crossed the threshold. She took a deep breath, fighting to stay calm. The kitchen was closing in, dark corners becoming prison-like, her mind spiraling into chaotic thoughts. Was this carefully crafted charm merely a mask? The oddities piled up like debris in her mind. His secluded lifestyle, the missing family in the photograph, the countless moments where he hadn't met her eyes directly. Jenna was lost in a whirlpool of uncertainty when she heard the floor creak. "Jenna?" she called, anxiety strangling the words. Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Something felt undeniably wrong. The oppressive quiet was shattered by a low growl, rumbling from somewhere outside. It echoed through the house like a deep internal drum, reverberating off the walls and shaking Jenna to her core. She took a hesitant step back, thinking of the safety of her own home, contemplating fleeing back into the night. Then Daniel's voice, sharp and frantic, cut through the noise. "Jenna, get away from the door!" Her instincts kicked in, and she scrambled away. Suddenly, something fierce and heavy slammed against the door, shaking the frame. Jenna gaped in horror as she grabbed the edge of the kitchen counter for support. What was out there? What had Daniel let in? She peeked around, straining to catch sight of him, but the entryway was empty now, swallowed by the shadows. "Jenna!" she yelled again, her voice cracking, a desperate plea for reassurance. But when she shouted, no reply came, just the relentless thud against the door, louder, more violent, as if whatever was outside had grown impatient, angry. Her breath came faster, cold sweat trickling down her spine. Her thoughts raced. Was he trying to protect her? Or was he the very thing she should be afraid of? "Jenna!"
The urgency in Daniel's tone jolted her. He rushed back in, panic radiating off him like heat from flames. "We need to go, now!" "Go where?" Her voice shook as she peered over Daniel's shoulder. "What is it? What are you hiding?" There was a subtle shift in his demeanor. Fear turned to something darker, a veil of calm that sent a pulse of terror through her. "Just trust me. You don't want to see what's out there." They stood on the precipice of panic, their options dwindling as the growls turned into snarls, close enough now to feel the vibrations. Jenna felt the walls close in, the weight of decision pressing heavily on her chest. "Why can't you just tell me?" she begged. "What are you afraid of?" Between the shadows, she saw it, a fleeting movement darting just beyond the door, grotesque and wild, its shape almost human, but not quite. "What I'm afraid of," Daniel stepped in front of her, blocking her view, his eyes narrowing, "is that you might find out and it won't end well for either of us." The darkness glowed with the red flash of something terrible, a monstrous arrival. Jenna felt the floor beneath her shudder as the growls crescendoed into a cacophony of raw rage, and with that, the door burst open, splintering off its hinges, revealing the nightmare that had been waiting patiently to make its entrance. "What is that?" she screamed, her reality shattering. But Daniel's reply was lost in the chaos as she stumbled back, the world pivoting. Her existence warped in an instant, and Jenna knew, deep in her bones, that she was about to uncover a truth darker than anything she could have imagined. Trapped between horror and helplessness, she glanced at Daniel one last time, his eyes wide with terror. Was this the unraveling of everything she thought she had known? As the creature lunged forward, claws glinting like knives, her question hung in the air, unanswered and pulsing. What if the real nightmare was the one hiding in plain sight? Behind them, the creature snarled, feet pounding the floor with a staggering force that sent vibrations through the tiles. "Where?" Jenna shouted, panic lacing her voice. "Back to my room," Daniel spat out, pulling her toward a narrow corridor that split off to the left. The shadowed path looked even more oppressive than before, but there was no choice. They reached the door to Daniel's room. He flung it open, the hinges squealing, and pushed Jenna inside before following her in and slamming it shut. She staggered backward against the wall, panting for breath, her eyes wide as they darted around the darkened space. The air was charged with a musty odor, a mix of sweat and something rotten. "Why is this happening?" she gasped, her voice trembling. "We didn't have time to explain everything. I thought—" He hesitated, his voice cracking. "I thought we'd be safe here. It's only a matter of time before it finds us." Jenna looked around the room, noting the strange symbols painted on the wooden walls, dark and swirling like ink blots against the pale paint. Books piled high on every surface, their spines cracked and yellowed, gave off a sense of forbidding knowledge. Could this be part of whatever Daniel was hiding? Suddenly there was a ferocious bang against the door, followed by a guttural screech that froze the blood in her veins. She jumped, falling back against a stack of books, knocking one to the floor. It fluttered open, revealing a collection of strange drawings, twisted images of creatures that looked too familiar. "Daniel?" she whispered, her heart racing. "What is this?" He stepped forward, his face ashen, but before he could respond, the door shuddered violently, splintering wood flying into the room. The creature was relentless, its growls growing louder, more desperate. If it got inside— "Move!" Daniel shouted again, pushing her toward a small window. "We have to get out." Jenna glanced back at the door. It was moments away from giving way. The jagged edges of fear coiled tighter in her chest, constricting the air in her lungs. "What about you?" she asked, panic stealing her resolve. "What if it comes for you?" "I can hold it back," he insisted, urgency pouring from his every word. "You need to leave now, please." She hesitated, torn between the instinct to flee and a fierce loyalty that compelled her to stay. But the snarling intensified, and she wavered, remembering that fleeting moment of the creature in the doorway. "Daniel, go!" Daniel's voice was frantic now. He was gripping the door handle, bracing himself for the inevitable. The wall shook again, and she saw the splintering start, inching downward. With a rush of adrenaline, she threw herself toward the window. The glass was cool against her hands, and she felt for a way to pry it open. The growling intensified, a crescendo of horror, and just as the door gave way with a crack like thunder, she forced the window up and clambered through. But as Jenna paused in the cool night air, she turned to look back, just in time to catch Daniel's terrified face as he was dragged backward into the dark whirlwind of fleshy limbs. She stumbled back, nausea creeping up her throat. Had she just left him? Standing there, alone and breathless, the haunting thought crept in. What had she just escaped, and what dark fate awaited Daniel now? The night was still, yet charged with a new horror. One truth was painfully clear. She had stepped from one nightmare into the unknown, teetering on the edge of something incomprehensible. Swallowing hard, Jenna felt her gut twist. If she was to find out what was really happening, she would have to go deeper than ever before. What would she uncover as she tracked the monster that had taken Daniel? Fear gripped her as she whispered to the night, "I won't leave you behind." But standing in the chilling silence, she began to realize that the real horror might have only just begun. Jenna stood frozen beneath the canopy of stars, her heart hammering in her chest. The night enveloped her, the darkness thick and suffocating. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, and a low rumble echoed in the distance, a warning or perhaps an omen. She glanced back at the house, the shadows swallowing it whole. Daniel's scream rang in her ears, intertwining with the memory of the creature's slithering limbs. Every instinct screamed for her to run, but a thread of guilt held her in place. She had to find him, but where to begin? The ground felt uneven beneath her, a pulse of fear throbbing through the earth like a heartbeat. Swallowing her dread, Jenna moved forward, edging away from the light. She felt her way along the side of the house, the rough wood digging into her palms. Her breath came in short gasps, each one drawing in the damp, earthy air that threatened to suffocate her resolve. A flicker of movement caught her eye, and instantly every hair on her body stood on end. She scanned the surrounding trees, shadows bouncing among the trunks. "Daniel," she called out, her voice barely a whisper, lost among the rustling leaves. Silence. A deep growl reverberated from somewhere beyond the trees, harsh and guttural, sending a wave of icy sweat down her spine. The fear made her hands tremble. She wanted to bolt, run back home, away from this madness, but she couldn't abandon him. "Just follow the path," she whispered to herself, pushing through the knot of panic in her throat. The moon peeked through the clouds, illuminating a narrow trail that snaked towards the woods. Taking a deep breath, Jenna stepped onto the path, every ounce of her being on high alert. The trees closed in around her, tendrils of shadows stretching and bending in ways that felt abnormal, almost sentient. The deeper she ventured, the more the world around her seemed to close in, muffling the sound of her footsteps against the crisp leaves. The growls grew closer, melting into a cacophony of snarls and thuds. Both urges to run and uncover the truth collided inside her. Suddenly, Jenna stumbled into a clearing, her breath hitching in her throat as she took in the sight. In the center of the clearing, illuminated by an eerie light that seemed to emanate from the ground itself, lay a large, pulsating mass. It roiled and twisted, resembling the creature she had seen before, but this one was different. It writhed as if in pain or ecstasy. Shapes danced along its surface. Faces? Her heart dropped as she recognized the features, twisted expressions of fear and despair, souls trapped in a living nightmare. "Daniel!" she screamed, panic lacing her voice as she sprinted forward, her mind spinning. The mass stirred, recoiling as though the power of her voice unleashed something within. The eyes of the trapped souls turned toward her, pleading and terrified, and in the depths of that suffocating light she felt an overwhelming surge of despair. With every step, the creature pulsated harder, and Jenna felt the pull of it, an unnatural gravity that attempted to draw her in. The air thickened, feeling viscous against her skin, each breath labored. She saw a flicker of movement inside it. A desperate hand reached out, fingers grasping for freedom. "Daniel!" Another scream tore from her throat, raw and primal. She ran toward him, but the energy around her twisted. Even the earth beneath her feet seemed alive, resisting her advance. In that moment of weakness, that moment of paralysis, she was greeted by a terrible realization. The faces in the creature's mass were stuck in an eternal cycle of torment. She was not just racing to save Daniel. The truth twisted in her gut like a knife. If she couldn't escape this creature's grasp, she could become one of those faces, a mere echo trapped forever. The growls returned, mocking and taunting, ricocheting off the trees. Jenna turned back and shook her head, trying to shake off the creeping fear, but it clung to her. She needed to act fast. If she didn't, she too would be drawn into that dark maw of despair. But there was one question gnawing at her, demanding an answer. What had the creature done to Daniel? As she readied herself for a futile fight, the darkness whispered back. Slender limbs began to extend from the pulsing mass, reaching toward her, urging her further into the depths of an unspeakable nightmare. Panic electrified her blood, and Jenna screamed, "I won't let you take me!" But the coming darkness echoed her defiance with an unsettling warmth, a malignant promise that didn't reassure, but terrified. With her heart racing, she turned back to fight the pull. But what would happen if she defied it? Would Daniel's soul remain trapped, fading into the shadows? The air sizzled with tension as she prepared to make a choice that could change everything. Would she save him or become part of the despair? The real horror awaited. Jenna's heart raced as the shadows beckoned, wrapping around her like cold fingers. She staggered back, desperate for clarity, desperate for Daniel. The growl intensified, a haunting chorus of hungry beasts growing restless in the darkness. "No," she whispered, "not him, not like this." The pulsating mass shifted, a grotesque wave of forms, twisting and contorting to some unseen rhythm, like a necrotic dance. The trapped souls twisted their mouths in silent screams, the agony in their eyes cutting through the haze of fear enveloping her. Each face reflected her own dread, the reflection of a nightmare she wished to avoid. Jenna's gaze darted around the clearing, searching for anything, any semblance of hope. Footsteps echoed behind her, sharp and deliberate. She spun around and found herself facing the darkness. It clawed at her, an invisible force dragging her back toward the mass. I can't go back," she muttered, fighting against the pull. The shadows swirled, thickening. Suddenly, a silhouette emerged from the night, barely discernible at first. It took a step forward, revealing a figure with wide, haunted eyes. Jenna's heart sank as she recognized it. "Daniel!" she gasped, reaching for him. "Help me!" His face was pale, gaunt, features twisted in a mix of despair and fear. "Run, Jenna! Get away from here!" But she couldn't fathom leaving him, even as dread clawed at her gut, pushing her to retreat. "No, I won't leave you!" Panic ignited her words, each syllable a desperate plea against the oppressive dark. "Please," his voice was frail, a whisper lost in the chaos. "You don't understand what this place is. It takes—" The mass groaned, the very earth vibrating with its power. Every face within it twisted, contorted in malevolent joy, as if it thrived on their anguish.
Tendrils curled towards Jenna, slick and glistening, urging her closer to the mass. She felt warmth bleed into her bones, tugging at the corners of her resolve. "Jenna!" Daniel's voice cut through the haze, raw and pleading. "Don't listen to it! Fight it!" Yet the longer she stood there, fighting the pull, the more she felt the weight of the shadows pressing down on her. The growls became a symphony of despair, deep and primal, a lullaby of death that promised peace in surrender. Less than a yard away, Daniel's eyes glimmered with fear. "It traps you! You'll never escape! You have to let me go!" A pain shot through her heart. How could she do that? "No," her voice broke, sobs emerging from the depths of her fear. She lunged forward instinctively, heartbreak twisting inside her. "I won't abandon you!" The eyes of the souls transformed into slits of darkness, fixed on her and Daniel, their cacophonic wails piercing the night with a chilling resonance. Hope felt tangible, yet utterly unattainable, as the force of the mass increased, amplifying the pull toward the void. "Jenna!" Daniel's scream echoed, reverberating in the cold night, raw and desperate.
"You have to save yourself!" As the tendrils wrapped around her ankles, tugging her closer, Jenna felt the heat of their cold despair seep into her bones. She was losing the battle. "I can't! I'm so scared!" The world brightened briefly, a flash of lightning crackling in the distance. In that surreal moment, she caught sight of a shimmer in the mass, a glimmer of a face. Was it one of the trapped souls? It matched Daniel's features, eyes wide with fear. A sudden urgency surged through her. Was it really him, or another trick of the creature? "Daniel!" she screamed, panic rising like venom in her throat. But the form of her brother twisted suddenly, slipping back within the mass, consumed by darkness once more. With a final scream, Jenna felt the weight of despair clutch at her throat. She was going under. "What do I do?" Jenna cried, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. The darkness wrapped tighter, whispering promises of release, and the last thing she saw before she lost the fight was Daniel's pleading eyes, swallowed by the shadows. What was real? What could she trust? Suddenly, a loud snap echoed from behind, breaking her concentration. A shadow split apart, revealing something strange advancing toward her. In that moment, a fractured terror, a thrilling thought crashed over her. A confrontation was upon her. But who or what was emerging from the dark? Was it friend or was it foe? Jenna's blood ran cold. The horror was far from over. The figure that stepped from the shadows was garbed in a tattered cloak that riffed like a living creature. It moved with an unnatural grace, gliding over the ground without making a sound. Jenna's heart thundered in her chest, the rhythm pounding in her ears. There was something human about the figure, and yet utterly alien, like a distorted reflection in a funhouse mirror. "Who are you?" she managed to croak out, clinging to the hope that this presence might be her salvation. The figure lifted its hood, revealing a face, if it could be called that. Skin stretched taut over bared bone, eyes black as coals boring into Jenna's soul. A thin, lipless smile formed, stretching wide, exposing teeth that were impossibly long and sharp. "I am the Keeper," it rasped, its voice a sinister whisper that slithered through the night. "Get away from me!" Jenna shouted, instinctively stepping back. The mass behind her thrashed with renewed fury, as if reacting to the presence of this newcomer. "You seek to save him," the Keeper continued, tilting its head with grotesque curiosity.
but it is an impossible task. The mass feeds on love, on desperation, and on fear. "No!" Jenna screamed, shaking her head. "I won't believe you. He's out there. I can save Daniel." The keeper laughed, a sound that echoed through the trees, dark and haunting. "You do not understand. He is yours to save, but only if you are willing to pay the price." "What price?" The word barely left her lips.
The darkness pressed close, breathing down her neck, as if it too hungered for the answer. "The hearts of those who chase shadows," it replied, as if savoring every syllable. "You will leave your world behind, and in return I will grant you the power to conquer the void." Jenna could feel the tendrils tightening around her, cold and clammy, tightening like a serpent's grip. "I would do anything to save him," she cried out, desperation clawing at her throat. "I'd give anything." The keeper stepped closer, the fabric of its cloak brushing against Jenna's skin, sending shivers up her spine. "Then you must choose your brother's soul for your own. A fair exchange, wouldn't you say?" The tug of the shadows grew stronger, a cacophony of tortured whispers inviting her to surrender. Each breath felt like stepping into an abyss. Was Daniel truly worth her life? Fear gripped her tighter than the creeping mass, suffocating her with its seductive embrace. The choice coiled around her mind like barbed wire, sharp and merciless. "No," she managed, trembling. "I won't." Suddenly, Daniel's voice echoed in her mind, calling her out, sharp and clear. The very sound ignited a flicker of strength deep within her. "Fight, Jenna, fight!" Jenna's insides twisted with determination. She glanced at the mass, her pulse racing with renewed hope. "I'm not afraid of you," she yelled, the strength in her voice surprising even herself. The keeper's smile faltered. "Fear is your ally, child. I can teach you to harness it." "No!" she shouted defiantly, stepping forward, breaking the grip of despair. "I won't let you win!" With a surge of energy, Jenna spun around, breaking free from the cold tendrils grasping at her ankles. Just as she made contact with the mass, a wrenching pain shot through her. Daniel's face flashed before her eyes, twisted, terrified, yet resolute. "Stay strong," she breathed, gathering every ounce of her will. She pressed against the dark, digging her fingers into the tree roots, grounding herself in reality. And as she did, a blinding light surged from her heart, a counterbalance to the hungry shadows. The keeper recoiled, covering its face with its hands. "You cannot fight forever," it screeched in fury as the light pierced the darkness. With one last surge of determination, Jenna roared, "I will not lose!" But the shadows pulsed violently, encroaching, digging deep around her. The keeper shrieked, a sound that chilled her to her very bones. And in that moment of chaos, Jenna's vision blurred. She blinked, and then everything shifted. The world around her spun, and she staggered back. Had she truly awakened, or had she just plunged deeper into the nightmare swirling all around her? As the shadows seemed to whisper her name, Jenna felt the dark promise still looming. The keeper's eyes locked onto hers, laughter bubbling forth once more. "Welcome to your new reality," it taunted, flaring with unholy delight. What realm had she somehow entered? And could the light she summoned truly save her, or lead her further into the abyss? The ground trembled as the mass roiled, ready to claim another soul. With a deep breath, Jenna steadied herself, the faint hope of rescue flickering dimly. The battle had only just begun, and she was caught in its dark embrace. But was the power to fight truly within her grasp? Jenna's heart raced, blood pounding in her ears as she tried to make sense of her surroundings.
The light she had summoned flickered like a dying star, casting eerie shadows on the warped trees around her. It felt as if the very ground beneath her was shifting, forming and reforming, dragging her deeper into an alien landscape of fear. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice trembling against the heavy silence that answered. The keeper's laughter echoed all around, bouncing off the twisted branches, each peal ringing like a death knell. "You are in the liminal space, child. Here reality bends, and hopes twist into nightmares. All that you fear is manifested. It hungers for your spirit." Jenna took a step forward, her resolve hardening. "I won't let it take me. I won't let it take him." She clenched her fists, willing the light within her to grow stronger. Thoughts of Daniel drove her, each memory like a thread connecting her to the world she desperately wanted to return to. But the mass behind her surged, a dark tsunami of desperation. The shadows whispered her name again, coaxing and pleading, each murmur sharp as shards of glass. "Join us, Jenna. Embrace the darkness." "No!" she cried, shaking her head fiercely. She could imagine Daniel's face, could almost hear his laughter from years ago, carefree and bright. "I won't give in." The ground trembled violently, the shadows writhing, churning under her feet as if alive. They were alive, each tendril seeking her out with insatiable greed. Jenna staggered, bracing herself against a nearby tree. Its bark felt damp and cold, pulsing beneath her touch. "Is this the power you promised?" Jenna shouted at the keeper, her voice rising over the growing wails of the mass. "This is not power. This is a prison." The keeper tilted its head, smile widening grotesquely, eyes gleaming with hunger. "Prison? No, my dear. This is a kingdom, a feast for the lost. You must decide quickly what you are willing to pay for your freedom." Suddenly, a vision flooded her mind, a way out. An unmarked path behind a thicket of brambles released shimmering, delicate threads of light. "Daniel!" she shouted, her voice trembling with a mixture of hope and fear. "Daniel! Can you hear me?" "Daniel!" The cry was a whisper, but felt like a thunderclap. It sent chills racing down her spine. She turned, raw fear coursing through her. Would she have to face the mass alone? "Whatever you want, whatever price you're asking, I'll pay it," she shouted into the chaos. "Just bring Daniel back." The keeper's laughter took on a deeper tone, reverberating through the growing storm of shadows.
The heart's desperation is a powerful currency, but there is always a price worth paying, and once paid, it cannot be returned. In that moment, a sharp pain burst through her chest, as if an unseen blade had pierced her. She gasped, fingers clutching at her heart, the world tilting violently. Pain erupted into flashes of white light, and she stumbled backward, collapsing against the tree once more. Jenna fought to catch her breath as visions swirled. Flickering images of the keeper, of Daniel, of their shared childhood, all twisted together. She could feel her spirit clawing to break free, as if sensing the void, ready to be swallowed whole. "Embrace it, Jenna. Embrace the dark, or witness your spirit die with your brother," the keeper hissed, each word cutting through her like ice. "Never!" With renewed determination, Jenna locked her gaze on the path behind the brambles, the light pulsing like a heartbeat. If she could just reach it, maybe she could bring Daniel back. But would the price be too great? As she made her move toward the light, the shadows roared, colliding without warning, like thunder crashing in a storm. The keeper's silhouette twisted in the chaos, forming and deforming, growing larger as it closed in.
Either sacrifice yourself or sacrifice him. What will it be? The keeper roared, the question hanging like a terrible omen in the air. Jenna's pulse raced. The ground shook beneath her as darkness surged, wrapping around her ankles, pulling her down. The taste of fear danced on her tongue, a bitter reminder of what she stood to lose. Could she truly save Daniel without losing herself? As the shadows dragged her closer to the depths of despair, Jenna fought back against the encroaching darkness, a single thought providing the strength she needed. "I will not lose him," she shouted defiantly. But as the keeper's laughter echoed, chilling her to her core, Jenna wondered, how much of herself was she willing to sacrifice for a life she was desperately trying to save? Would she find Daniel, or would she forever be lost in the dark? And then everything went black. Jenna gasped as light returned in a sudden flash, blinding, searing, and disorienting. For a breathless moment, she swayed, suspended between dimensions, still feeling the cold grip of darkness around her ankles. Her heartbeat thundered in her chest, a frantic drum summoning her to action. The shadows writhed at the edges of her vision, twisting and trying to break free. They reached for her, fingers of despair clawing upward, desperate to drag her down once more. But she clenched her teeth and focused harder on the shimmering thread of light. That flicker behind the thicket was her compass, a beacon of hope glowing against the encroaching dark. "Jenna!" Daniel's voice echoed again, rich with familiar warmth, but it felt untouchable, tethered to a realm far beyond her grasp. "Daniel!" She strained, her voice cracking as she fought against the consuming shadows. With every ounce of strength she had left, she shoved forward, battling past the tendrils whipping back at her. Each step was like wading through molasses, the burden of unseen chains holding her in place. The keeper loomed closer. Its eyes blazed with sinister delight, and its mouth split wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "Why do you resist, child? You could join this power. You could thrive here." "Never." Jenna felt something sharp slip by her throat, a chilling breath against her skin. "I won't be yours." The ground trembled further, and the air thickened with the scent of decay, mold, and rot, but she pushed through the onslaught. The light seemed to grow brighter. She could almost hear Daniel's laughter, just beyond reach. "What are you willing to give up?" the keeper taunted, its voice a dark melody, seductive and menacing. "You can save him, but what of your own spirit? What will you become?" A flicker of doubt gnawed at her, but she shook it away. She couldn't think about that now. She couldn't give in. The price for Daniel's life loomed large in her thoughts, but the alternative was unthinkable. What was a soul worth in the clutches of such abhorrence? Just then, Jenna felt something slip into her palm, a shard of shadowy glass, glinting with a sinister light. She paused. It pulsed, alive and beckoning. "Take it," the keeper whispered, breath hot against her ear. "It's a token. You can use it to bind your spirit to this place." "No," she breathed, fear clawing at her resolve. It pulsed like a heartbeat, beckoning her like a lover's call. "I don't want this." "Then turn back, run back into the dark and forever lose him," the keeper hissed, laughter echoing like distant thunder, "or seize the darkness for yourself." With a gnarled hand, the keeper stretched forth, shadow tendrils reaching like a final plea. Jenna's heart raced. She fought against the alluring darkness, against the longing to take the shard and negotiate a new power. The dim shapes formed a grotesque dance around her, enticing her to join their bitter revelry. Jenna stepped back from the darkness, her mind racing, memories of laughter splintering against the weight of her fears. She refused. Raising her glowing hand, she pointed toward the pulsing light she could barely see. I choose the light. I choose Daniel. Everything exploded. The shadows screamed, wailing in a dissonant chorus that vibrated through her bones. A violent wind hurled her back, slamming her against the tree bark. She clenched her eyes shut as blinding light engulfed her, pulsating like a heart in agony. And then, silence. When she opened her eyes again, she found herself standing at a threshold, a shimmering portal glowing against the dark trees behind her. Jenna inhaled, anticipation bubbling within her chest. She stumbled toward it, the vile whispers faded into a fleeting memory.
But the murmur came again, low and dangerous, trailing behind her like a shadow of doubt. You think you found the way, Jenna, but there's a cost beyond this door, a cost you might not be ready to pay. A tremble shot through her as she grasped the shimmering edge of the portal with both hands. What awaited her on the other side? Would it truly lead to Daniel, or deeper into a trap she could never escape? She knew one thing: the darkness wouldn't let her go that easily. Jenna took a deep breath and stepped forward, the world swirling around her. And then everything began to slip away. Jenna blinked hard, the world shifting violently around her. Shadows danced chaotically, opening and closing like curtains. She felt the warmth of sunlight break through, as if a long-forgotten dawn was stitching her back together. With a gasp, she stumbled forward. Was she free? Colors burst around her. The autumn leaves fluttered like gilded invitations. Yet that nagging chill of dread lingered. A shiver ran down her spine, and she fought to quiet her racing heart. "Daniel!" The name slipped from her lips, raw and desperate, punctuating the vibrant stillness surrounding her. "Daniel!" His voice wrapped around her. She spun, her vision locked on him standing beneath a towering oak, bathed in golden light, pale and fragile, but unmistakably alive. She rushed toward him, every fiber in her body crying out for the connection. "Is it really you?" she gasped, searching his eyes, hoping to find a glimpse of warmth instead of shadows. Confusion danced across his face, and her heart plummeted. The keeper's laughter echoed in her mind. Had she truly escaped? "Yes," Daniel replied, his voice struggling but real. "But you, the keeper, it's been trying to take us both." He looked into the distance, a pain flickering across his features. "I was there," she spoke urgently, her voice trembling. "It tried to lure me in. I made a difficult one. I said I wouldn't leave you behind." "I thought I'd lost you," he exclaimed, taking her hand. A rush of warmth surged as she felt his grip, grounding their connection against that flickering despair. But Jenna's heart was heavy with uncertainty. The darkness might still be lingering. "I don't think it's gone." "It won't stop easily," Daniel admitted, staring into the distance with wide eyes, the shadows looming ominously on the edges of her newfound world. Suddenly, a gust of wind whipped through the leaves, a sinister whisper unraveling in the breeze. The ground shook beneath them, and for a moment it felt like the shadows were reaching for them once again. "We need to get out of here!" she yelled, adrenaline pumping. They bolted together through the mosaic of sunlight and shadow, weaving through the trees, the familiar cacophony of nature filling the air. As they ran, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling of longing. What had they escaped? What parts of them were forever marked by the darkness? She remembered the echoes, the voices in her head, the promises that had tangled their spirits. But they kept moving, pushing through the growing shadows. Each step sent adrenaline coursing through her veins, and the bond between them solidified unbreakably. "Together!" she shouted, squeezing Daniel's hand tighter. "We figure this out together!" His eyes sparked with determination, and together they forged ahead, hearing the growls of the creature behind them begin to wane.
And then they stumbled into a sunlit clearing, breathtaking and serene. The edges of darkness began to recede, like mist dispersing in the light of day. Jenna felt warmth suffuse her being. It was a promise, a fragile opportunity to rebuild, to rise anew. "We can't let this happen again," Daniel said. His expression turned solemn. "We have to be vigilant. We have to talk about what we've been through, how it's changed us." "I know," she whispered, "but I won't lose hope. We survived the worst. Now we need to cultivate the light, together." As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Jenna turned to face Daniel fully. She reached up, brushing a stray hair from his forehead, her heart swelling with gratitude. "No matter the cost, I won't abandon you again." Together they stood, hands intertwined, ready to face not just the shadows of the past, but the challenges of tomorrow. In that embrace, they conjured their own light, forging a path, their resilience unyielding as they stepped into the golden expanse before them. They turned to walk, following the winding path away from the shadows, knowing the horror may awaken again. But as long as they had each other, the light would always find a way to break through. "Let's go home," Jenna said softly, allowing the warmth of hope to envelop her heart as they embraced the journey ahead. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt free. Make sure to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Every click counts. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Remember, only true fans understand how vital your support is for the channel's growth.